Hello. If you're here and watching this message, that must mean God still has a purpose for your life. So thanks for being here. Today we are in Exodus chapter 21. We're coming out of the 10 Commandments that were given yesterday. Here we go. Verse 1. Now these are the ordinances which you are to set before them. If you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve for 6 years. But on the 7th he shall go out as a free man without payment. If he comes alone, he shall go out alone. If he is the husband of a wife, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, and she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall belong to her master, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out as a free man, then his master shall bring him to God. Then he shall bring him to the door or the doorpost. And his master shall pierce his ear with an awl, and he shall serve him permanently. All right, so among the Hebrew society, debt and poverty existed like in most societies since the beginning of time. The rule put in place here was that no one would have to pay for their debt for more than 6 years, and on the 7th it would be wiped clean. The master would be obligated to provide for the servant upon his release. However, once free, if the former male slave enjoyed his life of working for his provider, a mutual arrangement could be made by the judges to live and work together, and the ear piercing was a mark to display this arrangement. Verse 7, if a man sells his daughter as a female slave, she is not to go free as the male slaves do. If she is displeasing in the eyes of her master, who designated her for himself, then he shall let her be redeemed. He does not have the authority to sell her to a foreign people because of his unfairness to her. If he designates for her his son, he shall deal with her according to the custom of the daughters. And real quick, as we carry on, keep in mind that what we're seeing here with all these strange rules put in place carries on from yesterday with the 10 Commandments, because God could see what was going on within these camps of the Israelites and knew that these rules had to be put in place. Okay, verse 10. If he takes to himself another woman, he may not reduce her food, her clothing, or her conjugal rights. If he will not do these 3 things for her, then she shall go out for nothing, without payment of money. So female slaves were treated differently in this culture. Many times they were concubines or secondary wives, seen in the days of the book of Genesis as well. Some Hebrew fathers thought it was more advantageous for their daughters to become concubines of well-to-do neighbors than to become the wives of men in their own social class. If a daughter who became a servant was not pleasing to her master, she was to be redeemed by a near relative, but never sold to foreigners. If she married her master's son, she was to be given family status in that family. If the master married someone else, he was required to provide his servant with food, clothing, and shelter. What was not to happen was for a female slave to be deliberately left destitute to fend off for herself. Verse 12, he who strikes a man so that he dies shall surely be put to death. But if he did not lie in wait for him, but God let him fall into his hand, then I will appoint you a place to which he may flee. If, however, a man acts presumptuously towards his neighbor, so as to kill him craftily, you are to take him even from my altar, and then he may die. He who strikes his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. Verse 16. He who kidnaps a man, whether he sells him or he is found in his possession, shall surely be put to death. He who curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. All right, so we see 4 crimes here that lead to the death penalty. Number 1 is premeditated murder. Number 2 is physical violence against parents. Number 3 is kidnapping. And number 4 is verbal abuse of parents. Allowance was made for unintentional accidental deaths. A guilty person could escape to one of the 6 cities of refuge after Israel was in the land, such as is stated in Numbers, Deuteronomy, and the book of Joshua. Because of the importance of the home, these new guidelines were put in place so that sanctity was guarded, parents were protected, children were controlled, and disrespectfulness was to be dealt with in the same way as murder. Imagine that. Verse 18. If men have a quarrel and one strikes the other with a stone or with his fist, and he does not die but remains in bed, if he gets up and walks around outside on his staff, then he who struck him shall go unpunished. He shall only pay for his loss of time, and shall take care of him until he is completely healed. So grown men were allowed to duke it out as long as they didn't kill each other. All right, verse 20. If a man strikes his male or female slave with a rod, and he dies at his hand, he shall be punished. Verse 21. If, however, he survives a day or two, no vengeance shall be taken, for he is his property. So this seems pretty crazy, but the punishment of the slave was to be the right of the owner. And hopefully after having been on the receiving end for hundreds of years in Egypt, they would decide not to exercise this punishment, you would hope. Verse 22. If men struggle with each other and strike a woman with child so that she gives birth prematurely, yet there is no injury, he shall surely be fined as the woman's husband may demand of him, and he shall pay as the judges decide. But if there is any further injury, then you shall appoint as a penalty life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, and bruise for bruise. So no duking it out around pregnant women. Got it? Okay. And reading this, I'm sitting here scratching my head as to what in the world was going on with these people. We know that they complain a lot with the best of them, but there must have been some crazy Jerry Springer type stuff going on for these obscure rules that God had to throw down in this chapter. All right, here's some more. Verse 26. If a man strikes the eye of his male or female slave and destroys it, he shall let him go free on account of his eye. And if he knocks out a tooth of his male or female slave, he shall let him go free on account of his tooth. I mean, what? All right, verse 28. If an ox gores a man or a woman to death, the ox shall surely be stoned, and its flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall go unpunished. If, however, an ox was previously in the habit of goring, and its owner had been warned, yet he does not confine it, and it kills a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and its owner also shall be put to death. If a ransom is demanded of him, then he shall give for the redemption of his life whatever is demanded of him. Whether it gores a son or a daughter, it shall be done to him according to the same rule. Verse 32. If the ox gores a male or female slave, the owner shall give his or her master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. I mean, this is interesting stuff. Verse 33. If a man opens a pit or digs a pit and does not cover it over, and an ox or a donkey falls into it, the owner of the pit shall make restitution. He shall give money to its owner, and the dead animal shall become his. Verse 35. If one man's ox hurts another so that it dies, then they shall sell the live ox and divide its price equally, and also they shall divide the dead ox. Or if it is known that the ox was previously in habit of goring, yet its owner has not confined it, he shall surely pay ox for ox, and the dead animal shall become his. Okay, and before you guys take off, let's read some laws in America today to show you that in a few thousand years, people really haven't changed all that much, and obscure laws are still be put in place because of what people choose to do. In Arizona, it's illegal for a donkey to sleep in a bathtub. In Arkansas, you can't honk your horn near a sandwich shop after 9 p.m. In Connecticut, a pickle must be able to bounce. In Delaware, you can't sell dog hair. In Georgia, it's illegal to live on a boat for more than 40 days. In Indiana, you can't ride a horse faster than 10 miles per hour. In Iowa, you cannot throw a brick onto a highway, thank God. In Kentucky, a woman cannot marry more than 3 times. In Missouri, bear wrestling is banned. All right, hold on. Okay, I'm sorry. I need to pull myself together. Okay, let's end on a serious note. So God wanted some order and structure amongst his people, and the consequences for disobedience were to a degree our society today couldn't even fathom. And although our society today would point these means out as cruel and unusual punishment, we have to put everything we're reading here into perspective. First of all, the holiness of God and the severity of sin would be completely foreign to mankind without the Spirit of God and his revealed word. Secondly, this is before the coming of Christ. And third, and this is a kicker here, these people were the first to represent the I am on earth, for crying out loud. They were the forerunners for basically mankind going forward. They are God's spokespeople, and the stakes are very high for their behavior going forward. I'm reminded of a verse from Isaiah when skeptics and critics point to chapters in the Bible such as this one to point the finger at how mean God is. Isaiah chapter 55 verses 8 and 9 says, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. So that's a good one to chew on as we keep moving forward and seeing what Israel gets themselves into. So please join me tomorrow. Thank you for being here today, and God bless you. Take care.